Hi there, I'm Ice here, and this is a quick guide to the normal version of the dungeon called Unhallowed Grave in Elder Scrolls Online. So I'm not here to help you with veteran mode. This is just a short guide that will only focus on the crucial points for normal mode, instead of some walkthrough that's for veteran mode and then get so detailed that, you know, when you get into the dungeon you wouldn't be able to remember the correct strategies when the time comes anyway. If you want help with veteran mode, you should go to Alcast channel or Xynode's guides or something. My point here is to help you out if you're just looking for that single Undaunted pledge key, or you just want the story and the skill point from the dungeon, or maybe you're trying to farm a set there, or even possibly just got randomly dumped into that dungeon if you're a random daily normal dungeon and you don't really know what to do. So I've seen people leave Unhallowed Grave instantly when they enter it just because they think that, quote, this dungeon is just AIDS or something, unquote. There is no need to be afraid of this dungeon on normal mode, at least. There are actually just two fights in the dungeon where you need to know two things each, and then one or maybe two more fights where you need to know like one thing. If you've got that down, you can breeze through the dungeon, and we're not going to go into any more detail than that. So first you're going to be using those grappling hooks quite a lot in this dungeon. If you've never used a grappling bow in the game before, just do the quest. It'll ask you to pick up the grappling bow from that chest, and then you aim it at the grappling point and use that to get across the chasms that divide up the dungeon and also handle some of the mechanics there. So this bow is crucial in both of the boss fights that first timers in the dungeon often struggle with. And the first boss you get to is Hakgrim the Howler. He's not really that difficult, even if you don't really know what you're doing. But when this woeful totem spawns, that thing does do more damage the longer it's up. So do make a point of blasting the totem as quickly as you can. Otherwise, there's really nothing to worry about in this first dungeon, you know. At least nothing that you shouldn't already know, since you are presumably already level 45 if you've got this dungeon with a random group. I mean, basically don't stand in red. If there are any heavy attacks on you, dodge roll or block, possibly damage, shield and block, and you'll be fine. The second boss, Keeper of the Kiln, that is where you're going to need the grappling bow first. So if you're getting into the room with the Keeper of the Kiln boss for the first time, before the fight starts, make a note of where those grappling points are upstairs. Because when you get the message that flames are rising in the vents, that's where you've got to stop doing damage to the boss and instead use your grappling bow, get upstairs. There are 3 platforms there, and you've got to find the one of those 3 platforms that has a sigil of the Forgotten on it, and then you have to activate that sigil. Don't worry that activating doesn't really seem to do anything up here. Don't worry about the ads up here. The only important thing is that you activate that one sigil, because once you do that, one of the 4 sigils downstairs, where the tank presumably still is holding the boss tightly, one of those 4 sigils are going to light up. Now what the tank has to do is to then take the boss to that one of the 4 sigils downstairs that is lit up, and it's got to do that while the others are holding back on the damage until the boss is properly placed. It's only when the boss is standing on the sigil that's when you do as much damage as you can to the boss, because enough damage will cause the boss to jam his sword into the sigil, and that's going to stop the flames. And that's why you actually really need to hold back on the damage until the boss is in place, because if that sword comes down in the wrong place, then the flames aren't going to stop. And basically, if the flames keep going, you screwed up the mechanic somehow, you're gonna wipe. To recap, watch for the flames rising mechanic. Once you get that message, grapple up and around till one of you finds the symbol. One of you is enough, activates that symbol. Then the tank brings the boss to the lit symbol, and then you damage him there. That's all there is to it, really. And this mechanic is the only one you're going to have to worry about in this fight. Although, killing the ads does help, because, a lot of ads can be a nuisance. But the basic thing is just you have to get this mechanic done in time. Because if you take too long lighting the sigils and getting the boss in place and blah, 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 the flames are going to rise until it does so much damage to you that your healer is not going to be able to out-heal it, and you're going to wipe. Once you've got that done, that's actually the most difficult thing in the whole dungeon, so we just move on to the third boss, the Eternal Aegis, which is basically a stack and burn fest. There's really only one trick to this boss, and that's to all stack up and hug the boss real close, because he does have a pretty hard-hitting, whirling red area of effect damage circle around him, but the thing is there's this Eye of the Storm thing inside the circle where you'll be completely safe. So just hug the boss, stay inside the red, let the tank hold him, and the adds in place. You know, this one's easy as pie. Then there's the fourth boss, Undergore the Mad. In this fight there are two phases. You do have to know what to do, but don't worry, if you manage to do the Keeper of the Kiln, you can do this no problem. The only thing is, first you've got the phase which happens in around maybe 80% boss health, and then the boss is going to start pulling in all that nasty green ooze stuff from the outer area of the room into that central platform where you've been fighting him. And at this point you have got to use your grappling bow again, find one of those grappling points, grapple out to the outer area of the room where there's no longer any poison, and then you've got to kill the adds there. It does help if the group can stick together as much as possible during this phase, because that way the healer can counter the damage that the adds do. But the most important thing is just get out of the central area before the radiation there just reaches lethal levels. So you're going to be grappling around the outer area, killing adds, and once all those adds are down, then the boss is going to expel the green ooze from the center and back to the outer area again. So now obviously you're going to have to get back into the center, because you do not want to be where the green death is, basically. This phase may happen once again later in the fight, but if you've done it once, you can do it twice. And then there's the other phase, and that's pretty clearly marked by 4 ghosts showing up, channeling an ability onto the boss, and this sort of blue window thing around the boss as well. I've also got an add installed that'll tell you to hide behind the pillars, and that's exactly what you've got to do, because what happens in this phase is the boss is channeling up this huge blue explosion, which eventually happens. When it does, you have got to take shelter, or at least before that explosion happens, you have to be behind one of those pillars, because the pillars are going to protect you from that massive blast, which, if you're not behind a pillar, it's going to stun you and it's going to kill you. You should also be killing those ghosts, because that will end the lethal explosion mechanic and also make the boss more vulnerable to your damage. But that's all there's to it, really. You grapple out of the green, and you hide from the big blue screen. And now you'll get to the last boss. You'll likely find that the last boss is an absolute pushover on normal mode, so just nuke him down, and then claim your reward. So, quick recap. First boss, trash that totem. Second boss, get upstairs, activate the sigil, and then do damage to the boss when he's at the lit sigil. Third boss, just stack and burn. And fourth boss, grapple out of green, hide from the blue screen. That's all, really. You're going to get through this no problem. You can now, start farming your Aegis collar daggers or rings or necklaces and whatever. Good luck. Have fun. Thanks for watching. Peace out.